What's up, everyone? Welcome into another edition of our NBA DFS DraftKings Picks videos. This time for Thursday, February 3rd. I got that a little confused after I said Thursday. I didn't really think third there through. But I'm your host, Justin Bales, joined again by Spike. How are you doing tonight? I know not doing great personally, but how are you?
Not too bad, just living the dream.
Living the dream. That's how you know it's going well.
Somebody's dream.
Really, like, if we're getting super personal, my life is fantastic. I have no complaints at all. But if we're talking NBA, what a brutal night. Just brutal. It started out terrible, 7 p.m. last night. I guess, we're recording this the night before if anyone's questioning why we keep saying that on today's podcast. 7 p.m. Isaiah Jackson tips and gets hurt in like 13 seconds or something. I had a bet on him. I played him in all DFS. I'm assuming most people played him in DFS. It just brutal start, and the night pretty much continued that in terms of basketball. It basically continued that, but we're on to a new night. We have a reasonable 6-game Thursday slate, which is actually pretty nice for Thursday, considering I think we've been at 3 games or less for like the last 3 or 4. Before we get going, let me quick pull up our projections for anyone wondering what you kind of get with our premium core plays package, which you can find that on the site, dfskarma.com. If you're looking on YouTube, you can see in the left-hand corner up near the top the pricing. Just go to the site, dfskarma.com. Click on that. You can find all of our packages. But what I have pulled up here is our projections, as is the same as every night. You start with players, positions, teams, salary. We do have projected points over all the way on the right. You can see floor points, ceiling points, which will help you in cash games and tournaments, depending on how you want to use them. Minutes projections, fantasy points per minute for each player. We have the ownership projections, all the advanced stuff, usage ratings, rebound rates, etc. that you could use. You can look on the screen if you're on YouTube and see everything that we're offering. And then what it is currently sorted by is the Karma value, essentially a points per dollar system here that tells you who the best options for the price are. As you could see last night, we really liked essentially 3 players: Cedi Osman, who I feel like most people liked, Luka Doncic, who made a lot of sense, and then Isaiah Jackson, who ended with a cool 0 in 13 seconds of play, or whatever it was. But the funny part about Jackson, and I'm just going to keep beating myself up over it, is his backup, Terry Taylor, came in and scored like 24 real life points or something. I think he may have doubled.
He definitely did.
He did. I stopped looking after I noticed he scored 24. I was just kind of done with it at that point. But it is what it is. We can get on to the injury news for tonight's slate, then go into position by position. Starting with Minnesota, Detroit. A lot of guys questionable for Minnesota. I guess a lot of guards, actually. Leandro Bolmaro, D'Angelo Russell, Josh Okogie, Patrick Beverly, all questionable. Josh Jackson and Cade Cunningham questionable on the other side. So obviously Cunningham's going to be a pretty big guy to watch for this slate. Landry Shamet, Campaign, both out for Phoenix, but DeAndre Ayton and Jay Crowder should be back. They returned last game, and then some people thought they might get the game off, but I believe they had a day off for rest in between. They're both probable to play. Trae Young is questionable for Atlanta. Kem Birch and Goran Dragic both missing time for Toronto. You have a lot going on in Miami. Omar Yurtseven, KZ Okpala, and Markieff Morris are all out. Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, PJ Tucker, and Caleb Martin are all questionable. On the opposite side of that game, Jakob Poeltl, Jock Landale, Zach Collins, and Keita Bates-Diop all out. Dejante Murray and Doug McDermott both questionable. De'Aaron Fox was out last night. I believe he's questionable to play tonight. I don't think that they necessarily know if he's going to miss this game, but it would make sense that he sits the front end of the back-to-back, plays the second part of it, but nothing for sure. Same can be said for Marvin Bagley, who's questionable for this game. Other guys are supposed to return for Golden State, specifically Klay Thompson, Stephen Curry, and Andrew Wiggins, both supposed to play as well. Nemanja Bjelica and Andre Iguodala are both out. Otto Porter Jr. questionable. And then it looks like LeBron James is questionable for this game after missing last night. On the other side, Ivica Zubac is questionable for the Los Angeles Clippers. We can go into position by position at this point. So what are you looking at for point guard here?
Yeah. My player pool for each position is going to be short and sweet. Hopefully it'll allow you to talk on some other guys that are good plays. I just personally don't like at the moment. But let's start right at the top. Chris Paul's at 9,700 against the Atlanta Hawks. If there's no Trae Young, that makes it even more enticing. I personally don't care either way. He's just kind of on fire right now. I think he was close to triple doubling two nights ago, and 3 nights ago he did triple double. This guy is just really hot right now, and he still got it. And the offense really just runs through him. Booker's great. I can't believe that Chris Paul is more than Devin Booker right now, and I like him a little bit more. But here we are, and I do. Other than that, if you go down a little bit more, Fred VanVleet at 8,800. It's a pretty good matchup against the Bulls. So you're going to hear me talk about a lot of Toronto players because they just play an absurd amount of minutes every game. So at 8,800, he should see at least 35 minutes. It's a good matchup. I think it's too cheap for him. You go down a little bit more. Malik Monk at 5,800, I think is still a little too cheap. If LeBron is out, if he's in, you can go ahead and forget about that. But I mean, the guy just takes a lot of shots when LeBron's not there, and most of the time they're threes. And if he's hitting them, the ceiling is just really high. Right underneath him is Reggie Jackson at 5,400. Gets a matchup against the Lakers, who just aren't good at guarding anyone, specifically point guards. And 5,400 is just too cheap for the upside that Reggie Jackson has. We haven't really seen it recently, but it's got to poke back out eventually. And this is a real nice get right spot for him here.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I was looking through plays and listening, and usually you kind of end with something on. I was like, I think he's done. No, I agree with the guys that you said. I think we're in such a weird spot because you're not really. I won't object to any of the top 4 point guards, assuming LeBron's out. Chris Paul, the cheapest of the guys, they're really just triple doubling, or at least flashing the triple double potential. I don't think he truly comes with the triple double upside. At least you don't necessarily project that he would with DeAndre Ayton on the floor, because the rebounds just aren't there. With that being said, he can drop 20 points. He can drop really close to 20 assists if he wants to. So I do think that Paul is still a very reasonable option. Opposite side, Phoenix has really struggled with point guards. If Trae Young is playing, Trae Young makes a solid option. The guy that I probably like the most, and this is contingent on Kyle Lowry being out. If Lowry is out, Dejante Murray, assuming Dejante Murray is in, Dejante Murray is still just a little bit too cheap. The dude has been playing out of his mind. You talk about a guy that can triple-double. The last time he recorded 9 or fewer rebounds, assists, or points in a game was, I believe, 4 games ago. And before that, it was like 6 or 7 games ago. So always a triple-double threat. And then you have Stephen Curry. I think people believe that Klay Thompson takes away from him. He doesn't. If you look at Stephen Curry with and without Klay Thompson on the floor this season, the numbers are essentially the same, except for he averages more assists per game with Thompson playing, which really shocked me. I actually thought that was ridiculous when I saw it, but that is the case. So I do think that Curry is completely fine against Sacramento. Kind of just gave you literally every high-priced option on the slate, and I think that's fine. I guess if I'm if I'm ranking them, assuming Kyle Lowry is out, I would rank Dejante Murray, Chris Paul, Stephen Curry, Trae Young most likely. So I do like all four. There's my rankings for the four. As you drop down more, I think obviously Derek White is going to be a top option if Dejante Murray's out. Wanted to quick throw that out there. Ayo Dosunmu just has a complete role now with Lonzo Ball out. He's locked into 30 plus minutes. He's actually playing minutes at the lowest in the mid 30s, and he can get up to 40. 30 plus fantasy points in each of his last two. He's down to 5,600 because I'm just guessing it's because the Chicago Bulls are healthy now. Like his price has gone down every game since January 24th, and he's destroyed value really in his last two games. So weird that it keeps dropping, but it kind of is what it is, and it gives us a decent spot there. Minnesota, I think it's important to kind of touch on this because so many guys are out. If one of D'Angelo Russell or Patrick Beverley misses, the other one makes an elite option. If both miss, Jalen Noel is a really good play. And then if both play, I think for 4,800, you can still use Patrick Beverley. I don't think you really use D'Angelo Russell for the price tag, though. And then I guess two more I'll say here. If De'Aaron Fox is out, Davion Mitchell's been playing out of his mind. I do really like him. I apologize at this point about this being so many ifs, and you have to remember and stuff. I don't know. I can't change who's questionable and stuff, though, so we kind of need to at least consider. And then I do think that Corey Joseph is a reasonable play regardless of anything. But again, if Cade Cunningham misses this game, Corey Joseph probably becomes close to a lock for only 4,300. Killian Hayes obviously will see a bigger role. He's only 4,000, but it's not like if Cade Cunningham misses, Killian Hayes is the guy that's going to take over the offense. That's just not how it's going to work. So I much prefer Corey Joseph in that type of a situation. Shifting to shooting guard, what do you got here?
I have no issues if you don't want to play Chris Paul and you want to go to Devin Booker. It's a great matchup for him as well. A little cheaper at 9,300. You go down some more. Surprise, surprise. Gary Trent Jr. at 6,100. They're just locked into 35 plus minutes, and this guy's been really hot lately, and so again, it's a pretty solid matchup against the Bulls, and he's going to see the minutes. Directly right underneath him is Klay Thompson at 6K, matched against the defenseless Kings. He's no longer like on a minute restriction at all, and he's just a really good play. I think he really correlates well with Steph Curry too. I don't think you play them both, but I think he still benefits from having him right beside him on the court. And then I was gonna say Derek White, but you kind of snaked that one.
Stole him from you.
Another guy I kind of like, or I'll go back to the Wolves here, is Anthony Edwards. I mean, yeah, if some of those guys are out, yeah, it'll be an even better play. But this guy's coming off a terrible game, so no one's going to be on him. It's a pretty solid matchup, get right spot against Detroit, and he's only 8K. It's a little too cheap for the upside that he possesses. Other than that, you could. Nope. That's about all.
You're out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree for the most part. I think the guy that just sticks out so much is Gary Trent Jr. 6,100. He has been hitting value. He's been 5xing on points alone in 5 consecutive games.
It's wild.
It's not like he does a ridiculous amount extra while on the floor, but if he's solely going to 5x on his points, he makes multiple threes, so you're getting half a fantasy point for every one of those that he makes, which I think he's making like at least 5 a game in each of his last 5. So there's that. And then just any rebounds, assists. The guy had 5 steals the one game, which is 10 fantasy points, 15 on FanDuel. So just way too cheap. I think it's important to note if someone like Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry miss the game, Tyler Hero gains quite a bit of value. Max Struss also would gain value. Gabe Vincent as well. It's kind of sucks that they're all questionable at the moment, but keep that in mind. I think at 5,600, Amir Coffey against the Lakers. I don't like their defense. It doesn't scare me whatsoever. I prefer point guards to shooting guards or other positions, really any other position against the Lakers. They're just really bad against point guards. But Amir Coffey can score fantasy points in a hurry, so I think that he's fine for tournaments. If you drop down to 4,500, Devin Vassell's actually been playing pretty big minutes. We know that he can score in a hurry. He's been putting up rebounds, adding a few assists. He can get steals. I believe he's coming off of a 36 fantasy point game. So matchup against Miami is interesting. If Dejante Murray misses and there's a chance that Vassell gets minutes at shooting guard, that would actually really, really help because that's where Miami struggles. I don't necessarily know, even if Murray's out and Derek White shifts over to point guard, I'm not necessarily sure that Vassell would take over the shooting guard role, but at least it's a possibility. And then I guess we can mention it. If Trae Young's out, DeLone Wright and Lou Williams are both a little bit too cheap. Wright's 3,600. Lou Williams is 3,400. I would anticipate Trae Young playing tonight, but if he's out, either one of those two can at least be considered on this slate. Shifting to small forward, what do you got here? Because I'm assuming just everyone plays Jimmy Butler. He's only 9,400, and he's taken on a completely different role where he's the facilitator of the offense. And I don't know if that changes if Kyle Lowry's back, but I feel like he's just a triple-double threat each night, and he can really score well too, even while facilitating. So I feel like even if Lowry comes back, you kind of have to leave the ball in Butler's hands, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty obvious spot at a rather weak and terrible position yet again. So he should be pretty popular on a smaller slate, and I have no issues here whatsoever. But if you want to go down a little bit more, and I'm going to stay with my theme, Scotty Barnes at 6,800. Again, just sees a boatload of minutes. He'll probably be the lowest owned out of all these out of all the starting Raptors, just because he really doesn't have a ceiling. He just kind of produces in the 30 to 40 fantasy point range on a nightly basis. I mean, I guess his floor is probably like 25 or 30, but I mean, 6,800 isn't too bad. I mean, you're pretty much looking for 35 to 40 points, which, I mean, is more or less his average. And actually a little bit above him, assuming he plays, he's questionable right now. Zach LaVine's been playing pretty well on the other side of that game. And I think 8,900 is a little too cheap with balls still out. He's just an all-around great player. He can contribute in most of the categories. And if his shot's falling, like, the upside is way better than 8,900, that's for sure. And then if you want to go down a little bit more, like a value play, Nicholas Batum at 4,400, I think is a little cheap against the Lakers. He hasn't been playing super well the last 2 or 3 games, but you go back like 5 or 6 games ago and you see where his ceiling's at, putting up like 40 to 50 fantasy points. And I'm willing to take a shot on him that at a weak position. But that's more or less about it for me.
This position is hilarious.
Yeah.
Just thinking about who I'm about to say, it really is just crazy at this point. 2022, that's the year we're in. Keep that in mind when I'm running through the guys that I'm at least considering. One, Jimmy Butler is the top guy. I kind of already talked about that. I do really like him, assuming he's playing. Zach LaVine, completely fine with. I like Anthony Edwards. Andrew Wiggins, I hate that I have to say it, but Sacramento has been very bad against the small forward in recent games. Wiggins has dropped 40 plus in 2 straight. He at least has the upside. He's only 6,700. People probably aren't going to use him because Steph and Clay are on the court. So You're going to get him at relatively low ownership in a really good matchup. So I think that that's fine. There's not all that much else that I like. Guys, anyone that I talked about at shooting guard that's small forward eligible. If Trae Young's out, Kevin Huerter is probably going to play, minutes in the high 30s. So I would take a shot there. The other guy that I would consider here, and this is if Patrick Beverley and D'Angelo Russell are out, man, is it not something I want to say, but Tarin Prince, he 45 in his last game in 24 minutes, 24 and 28 in the two before that, both 24 minutes. If he's getting the minutes, I mean, Tarin Prince hasn't really been good in years. But I don't know. He's producing. The position's atrocious. And the minutes will be there if Russell and Beverly are out again. I don't know. Did you want to try to just completely talk me off of Tarin Prince here? Because that is such a ridiculous thing that I'm considering. But he feels like legitimately one of the better plays at this position too, which is why it's so sad.
Yeah, I guess I don't mind it if Russell and Beverly are out, but other than that, even at that, that's a large field GPP play for me. Yeah, he's been doing good the last 3 games, seen over 24 minutes in 4 of his last 5. But again, that's more or less because of injuries. Mm-hmm. His last game, he went 6 for 9 from behind the arc. I guarantee you, we're not going to see that again for a while.
50% or better in 3 straight, though. The dude, shooters are going to shoot, right? And if there's one thing I know about Tarin Prince, it's that dude has been a shooter his whole career.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the worst play at a terrible position. I'll say that much.
I can't believe we're even discussing this at this point. It's 2022. We're in February of 2022, and we're discussing Tarin Prince as potentially one of the better plays at any position in the NBA.
Now, luckily, we did this the night before, and more value is going to open up. So hopefully, come 4 or 5, we're not even 4 or 5 p.m. Later on today, we're not even mentioning his name, because if we are, then that's not good.
That's going to be rough. We can shift to power forward. Who are you looking at that position?
All right. So my last and final Raptor, probably my favorite one, Pascal Siakam at 9K. Chicago's really struggled against the power forward position. And granted, Siakam plays a lot of center now. They really aren't that good at that either. And there's ways to beat them. And if there's someone who's going to find those ways and exploit those ways, it's going to be him. 9K is just too cheap. He's been really solid his last 3 or 4 games out. I think 2 nights ago he got 2 or 3 fouls right off the bat. So he pretty much missed a full rotation, and he still put up 45 fantasy points. So the upside is just nice. He could probably, I guess, a ceiling here is probably about 60 fantasy points, which I feel like he does more often than not, and it's just a really good play. You go down a little bit more. Keldon Johnson at 5,700 still seems a little too cheap. I guess with Miami getting Lowry back, that defense is slowly starting to come back into fruition. So I still like the play at 5,700. I still think it's a smidge too cheap. You go down more. Jake Crowder, I believe it's going to be his 2nd or 3rd game back after missing 4 games, but he's 4,200 against the Atlanta Hawks. I really like the spot there. It's just way too cheap for someone who we know can kind of get hot from behind the arc, and he can kind of contribute in steals and rebounds too. So I think that's a pretty good play there. And then if you really want a dart, I guess this is going to be more dependent on if LeBron is out. But my boy Stanley Johnson's at 3,600. If he's starting again, he's probably going to see upwards of 20 to 25 minutes. So at 3,600, it's not going to take too much to beat value there.
Yeah, I actually liked Stanley Johnson coming out of college. I thought that he was going to be a good player. And then I don't know. I don't think that he's bad, and he just earned himself a 2-year deal. So I just don't think that he's like the star. And I think that the NBA gets in these weird spells where, like, if you're a top pick, and I don't mean the top pick, I mean a top pick, essentially up until the lottery. And like, even if you just become a very solid role player, you're such a bust that, or you've been labeled such a bust, especially if you don't become a good role player until, a few years into your career. Like, if you are bad for your first 2 years, even if you're coming out at 19 years old, you're such a bust that you're not really ever going to shake that label. Like Andrew Wiggins is still this massive bust. He's an all-star. He's an all-star. I mean, technically he is. But I mean, obviously, even though maybe he doesn't deserve the all-star, we know a bunch of guys that probably deserve it slightly more. He's still at least in the conversation for it. And no, he obviously wasn't the next LeBron, which what people pegged him for, but like he's still a very good player, and people don't really understand that. Now, this has kind of been a little off topic because Stanley Johnson isn't a good fantasy player. You're just kind of taking him because he's cheap and you want the minutes, which I completely understand, because if he does drop 10 points, he could pick up a few steals. That's kind of what he does, and then get some defensive stats as well. So I do think that it's a fine play if LeBron's out and Stanley Johnson is getting the minutes, but I don't know, a little tirade there about people just labeling players bust for absolutely no reason. One of my pet peeves of the NBA. Really don't like that very much. But power forward, I think that Pascal Siakam's a really good option. Right above him on the other side, DeMar DeRozan. I don't think that Toronto really has anyone that's going to slow him down. I think between the two, I prefer Siakam, especially for being $200 cheaper. There's very little I like at this position. I think you got it right with Jay Crowder. The big one for me essentially has to be Keldon Johnson. He's just way too cheap. I've said it a million times. He shouldn't be under 6,000. I don't know what necessarily happens here, because we saw, there's no Jock Landale, there's no Jakob Poeltl. And we saw before, when they both got hurt, Eubanks played, but they also played a lot of small ball with Keldon Johnson at the center. And if that's the case, I think it really takes away his value, because Bam Adebayo is so good defensively. I don't know if Adebayo can follow him out to the 3-point line. Well, he can, but I don't know if it probably takes away some of his effectiveness. He's better at guarding, more traditional centers. In a way that, the majority of bigs in the league are better at that type of thing, even though Adebayo still can absolutely travel out and take out anyone that he wants, really. But still, 6K is too cheap. I think that I can tell you now, this is the night before at 10:45 p.m. I say over a 50% chance that Keldon Johnson is my power forward tonight. I don't like the position, and it's just too cheap in my opinion, even in the tough matchup. Even if everyone comes back for Miami, I don't really care. I'm still going to play Keldon most likely. Could bite me. We'll see what happens, but that's about all I have for power forward. There's just not that much there. To me, I do think that you made some good points at guys you would use, and I wouldn't really try to talk you off of any of them, but more Keldon Johnson or bust at this point for me. Shifting focus to center, who are you looking at this position?
We'll stick to the Spurs right there real quick and get this one out of the way fast. Drew Eubanks is the only center available, I believe, for the Spurs. So he's probably going to start. They're going to need his size a little bit at some point. I mean, Bam isn't huge, but Bam isn't really small either. And he's 3,300.
Yep.
He's gonna see minimum 20 to 25 minutes. Assuming he can stay out of foul trouble. And 3,300 is just a smash play. He needs 20 points to exceed value. Enough said. We got that one out of the way. As much as I hate that play, I feel like we might have to bite the bullet there. So I guess I'll start at the top now. Karl Anthony Towns at 10K is maybe a smidge too cheap for a matchup against Detroit, where there's just nobody who's going to stop him. Especially if Beverly and Russell sit, they're going to kind of lean more on Cat, I think. And he's more than capable of filling that role and taking over that offense. Uh, you go right underneath him and keep your eyes peeled on this because I'm not sure if AD is going to play or Anthony Davis is going to play the back to back. But 9,800 against a Clippers team that could be without Zubac, sign me up. It's a really good matchup. I mean, I honestly think center might be my favorite position tonight. Right underneath him is Bam Adebayo at 8,400 against a Spurs team that only has Drew Eubank as a center. And if your next best thing is Keldon Johnson, good luck stopping him. I could definitely see them feeding him all game long, and he's just going to win that match nine times out of 10 against someone like Keldon Johnson or even Drew Eubanks. And then I guess, if Zubac is out, I have no issues going to Serge Ibaka, who shockingly saw, I think, 25 plus minutes the other night. 3,500. It's just too cheap for someone who's going to see those minutes with his kind of skill set. And the Lakers just don't really have a true center anyway. So especially if LeBron's out too, I really like that play. And then I guess one more I'll throw out there, and he'll probably be relatively low owned because of almost everyone I just said, is Kevon Looney, 5,200 against Kings team that just can't guard any position whatsoever on defense. And this guy has double upside. I think you played him the night before, and he had a double I think at halftime.
Yep. Don't remind me.
Yeah, and then after that, he didn't do too much. But it's not a terrible play. I definitely wouldn't mind taking a shot on him in large field GPPs because he's not going to get a lot of ownership. I can tell you right now, especially with as the day moving on. I'm sure even more value will open up as certain positions that'll make people not even want to look at this guy's name. But it's not a terrible play. But that's more or less probably about it for me there.
Yeah, that was rough. I did play Looney against San Antonio. He doubled at half, and then they played him a few minutes in the second half, benched him for the rest of the game. I ended up playing 22 minutes in the entire game. Made no sense whatsoever. He was absolutely dominating everybody. Granted, they won the game with their backups, so it's tough to necessarily say that what they did was wrong. But at the same time, didn't make any sense to me and really put a damper on what was going to be a very good fantasy night. Yeah, I think you're right. I think the ball runs through Towns and Edwards if D'Angelo Russell and Patrick Beverley are out, so I do like him. Really tough that I don't think Anthony Davis plays in this back-to-back because he was going to be one of my favorite plays in the entire slate. Any center against the Clippers right now is just a phenomenal play. If I have to use someone like Dwight Howard or DeAndre Jordan on this slate because they play the Clippers, I'm going to be so mad. But I don't know. Hopefully something weird happens. They just play Anthony Davis in the back-to-back. I do think he loses value, obviously, if LeBron James returns. So that's kind of contingent on that. Bam Adebayo and Drew Eubanks outlined extremely well. Both of them elite plays. I kind of personally, I don't feel overly comfortable with Eubanks. When you look at what happened in the last game, I know for sure that Jakob Poeltl played 12 minutes. I think that Jock Landale only played 8 after that, which puts it at 20 minutes. And Eubanks still only played like 5. So I don't necessarily know what they're going to do. My guess is that they're going to play Eubanks at least 20-25 minutes because Bam Adebayo is so much bigger than someone like Keldon Johnson. They can't go small.
Right.
Whereas like you had the weird situation with Golden State where obviously the bigs got hurt for San Antonio. They brought in Keldon Johnson, played him at the 5. That's most likely why Kevon Looney didn't play the remainder of the game. They just went small to match him. But when you have someone like Miami who, you're not benching Bam Adebayo the way you would bench Kevon Looney. Like that's just not going to happen. So you have to choose. Do you want to go small against their big, in which Adebayo is going to eat down low, or do you want to play someone like Eubanks? My guess is they're at least going to give half the game to Eubanks, and if that's the case, he's way too cheap. Outside of that, I think Looney's fine. I think that on the opposite side, Rashawn Holmes for 5K is too cheap. Golden State's a really good defense, but they struggle really bad against rebounding centers. Not that Holmes is this elite rebounder by any means, but when you give him the upside of double-digit rebounds in a game, it kind of just adds to everything that he can possibly do. That might be about it. I understand what you're saying with Serge Ibaka, but how often is Ibaka going to drop 35 fantasy points in 22 minutes?
It's a fair point. It's a fair point.
Like, can it happen? Yeah, absolutely. Serge Ibaka is just prone to some of these like massive games, and he's 3,500. So like he only needs, 20, 25 fantasy points to really beat value. And it's not even slightly out of the question if he gets 22 minutes. It's just, I don't know. If I click Serge Ibaka and I lose because Serge Ibaka screwed my team, like I'm going to be so mad. If I click Karl Anthony Towns and I lose because Towns screwed my team, at least I made a good play, right?
Yeah, no, I feel you. I got one more thing for you. So let's assume that Anthony Davis rests and LeBron doesn't play. Do you think they go ahead and rest Russell too? And if they don't, he becomes like a fantastic play, no?
Yeah, I don't. I think most teams outside of Golden State the other night, I have no clue what that was. When you rest stars, you usually don't rest them all together. So like if LeBron can't come back, and obviously you're resting AD because he was out for so long, and this is the second half of a back-to-back. Russell Westbrook, who's really the NBA's Iron Man regardless. No, I don't think that he rests. I think that he's going to play, and I think that he'll be in literally everyone's lineup, or should be, really. Russell Westbrook on any team that doesn't have a secondary star, you kind of have to use, and it's like fantasy doesn't care how efficient you are, I guess is the best way to put it. All it cares about is the numbers that you put up, and Russell Westbrook can put up some big numbers when there aren't guys like LeBron on the court with him.
Right.
That is all that we have for you guys tonight. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and give us a thumbs up. Drop any comments you have below. You can subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications if you don't ever want to miss any of our videos. But until then, good luck, and we'll be back for tomorrow's video.